and welcome to CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome to today's episode.
Hello everybody, thanks for joining us.
So Jill, where in the world are we?
We are in the UK.
Okay, and the title?
I have no idea.
Oh, for God's sake, we're not at another one of these things where you've not even done a title.
I forgot. I was trying to think of one and then I couldn't, and then I thought, oh, I'll go back to it, and I've just realised I never went back to it.
You should never do that.
It'll have a title by the time it's published.
It always does.
Yes.
So, for you guys, you already know what this is called.
Yeah.
I still have no idea.
That's so weird, isn't it, that our listeners will find out before you do.
Yeah, so I have no idea. Maybe I'll think of one along the way.
Well, you might.
You never know.
Yeah, so before we start, I'm just going to give a trigger warning that this episode does not contain murder, but it does contain, like sexual abuse, rape, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay, so if anybody feels that they can't listen to that, then we'll see you next time.
Cool. I'll see you later then.
No, you have to stay.
No, I don't know what it's called.
Well, what does it matter?
Well, I don't know, I might not want to hear it now.
Well, tell them if you're here and you're listening. So should we dive in?
Okay, let's dive in.
So Eleanor Williams, known as Ellie, was born on the 26th of November 2000. And she's from Barrow-in-Furness, Cumbria, which is in England.
Oh, I passed there on Monday.
Oh, did you?
Barrow.
Oh, yeah, Barrow, that's where she's from.
Yeah, past the lakes on my way home.
So her mum and dad split up when she was young, and she didn't see her dad very often. Her mum remarried, and she was brought up by her mum and stepdad. She's the middle child with an older sister and a younger brother. Our family, they're quite well known, like in Barrow, like because her mum, Alison, was a Labour councillor, and she was described as like a pillar of the community, you know.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So
she had a normal childhood. She did well at school. She had lots of friends. She did skip school now and again, but, didn't we all?
Yes, yes, we did.
Yes.
Hopefully that will not repeat, history will not repeat itself.
Well, it probably will.
No.
So she could be moody sometimes, and, like she'd go to house parties and drink, but she wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. That, she was just doing what kind of teenagers do. Mm. So when she was 16, Ellie made a report to the police. She had gone out to a party at the home of a guy called Cameron. She had been drinking and smoking weed, and she was sick. It made her ill. So 22-year-old Cameron called Ellie's mum and asked her to come and pick her up. So her mum and her sister arrived to get her. Mm-hmm. So the next day she woke up on the couch at home, but she told her mum that something had happened the night before. She said she couldn't quite remember, she kind of passed out or whatever, but she thought that something sexual had happened to her. So the police were called, and Ellie went to the police station to make a statement. She told them that her and Cameron went into his room and they had a shot of vodka each, but then Cameron told Ellie that she owed him for that. So Cameron started kissing her on her neck and her chest, and she told him that she needed the toilet because she wanted to get away from him. Uh-huh. So she tried to get away from him, but he dragged her back by her hair, forced her on the floor and sat on top of her. He pulled her dress and her bra down and started laughing at her, saying her boobs were ugly. Right. And then she said she couldn't move, she couldn't see anything, but she could hear everything that was going on around her. She said it was horrible and she thought she was going to die. Mm-hmm. But the next thing she knew, she was waking up on the couch at home.
Right, okay.
So she showed the police Snapchat messages that she had screenshotted from Cameron. Mm-hmm. One said, drugged you, fucked you, mugged you, left you, laughed at you.
Lovely.
Another one said, I've got HIV, and another one said, you've got AIDS, mate.
Lovely.
Cameron was arrested and interviewed, and he denied it. Police had screenshots of the messages, but he denied all knowledge of them. Right. So he was charged with sexual assault, and he was released pending investigation. And Ellie got another message from him saying, get the feds on me and I'll do it again. This time I'll make it brutal, finish you and bury you.
Why would he be so stupid to do that, though? Because obviously she was smart enough to screenshot the original messages, then surely there would be a chance she would screenshot those messages. Mm.
So she then decided to withdraw her support for the prosecution, and Cameron faced no further police action.
Oh, no.
When Ellie was 18, so 2 years later, she went out on the 8th of March 2019 with a man called Jordan Trengrove and some other friends. They were all drinking and Ellie was like really drunk, like totally out of it, so Jordan took her home. But in the days after that, she confided in friends that Jordan had actually taken her to another house that she didn't recognise and he raped her before taking her home.
Right.
And then she got some messages from Jordan and she screenshotted them, you know, just in case she wanted them for later. But for now, she didn't report the assault to the police.
Okay.
A couple of months later, she did report Jordan to the police, though, and she said that Jordan had forced his way into her flat. He pulled out a pocket knife, stripped her naked in the living room, and then pulled her by her hair into the bathroom. He then grabbed the shower head and started beating her with it. He then raped her whilst threatening to kill her, and then eventually he left. She also told them, because now that she's reported this one, she told them about the night in March, and she showed them screenshots that he'd sent her, one saying, "You were wanting it, I should have filmed it, could relive the experience." Another one said, "I'll rape you again and leave you for dead." And she also showed them the bruises she had from, like, her body was covered in bruises from Jordan beating her.
Right.
So Jordan was arrested and he denied everything. He said, yeah, they had been out together that night in March, but Ellie disappeared halfway through the night and he hadn't even noticed when she had left.
Right.
He had been chatting up another girl, so he was too busy to notice, you know, like what was going on around him, what everybody else was doing. And he didn't even know Ellie that well. He denied sending her messages and he actually had an alibi for that night. The girl that he'd been talking to went home with him and she stayed at his house all night.
Right, okay.
So they were actually dropped off by police because police had been driving by and they saw Jordan arguing with somebody at a taxi rank.
Right.
So they decided to take him home just so that it didn't escalate.
Yeah,
So they actually got a lift home from the police.
Right, okay.
So with this alibi, Jordan was let out on bail. But 3 days later, on the night of the 18th of May, Ellie phoned the police. The operator asked what her emergency was, and she said really quietly, "He won't get out of my flat." And the operator asked, you know, "What's your name? Like, what's happened that you want him out of your flat?" And Ellie was like, "He's just smacked me." And the operator asked if she needed the operator asked if she needed an ambulance. Ellie didn't answer, so the operator asked, like, has he just walked in the room? And, like, just say yes or no. If you can't speak, just say yes or no as he walked into the room. But she didn't say anything again. So the operator said, well, right, if you can't speak, just can you press the number 5 twice on the phone, which she did. So the operator said, right, we're coming to you as an emergency, like, try and stay as safe as you can. So when the police turned up, Ellie was alone. She was unconscious and naked and bruised. At the police station with bruises across her face and her legs, Ellie told them that she had left her door unlocked for a friend was coming round. So she'd left the door unlocked so they could just let themselves in. But Jordan had turned up, let himself in, beat her and raped her. As Jordan was already on bail, the police felt they couldn't take any chances, so they arrested him again, and he was charged with 3 counts of rape.
Right.
He pleaded not guilty, and he was placed in Preston prison sex offender wing while waiting for his trial. So the following month, June 2019, Ellie was reported missing, like, quite a few times in that month, but she was found each time by the police. Every time they found her, she was either on drugs, she'd been drinking, she was always covered in cuts and bruises, so there were significant concerns for her safety. Because they're like, what's she doing? Like, what's happening here? So one day in July, the many times that she was at the police station, you know, because they've obviously found her again, the police station asked what she wanted to talk about. She told officers that when she was younger, she had attended house parties and she met an older man at one of them. He was called Rami. He made her think that she was his girlfriend for a long time. He told her how special she was and how much he loved her. This guy was called Mohammed Ramzan, and he goes by the name Mo Rami.
Right.
So, Rami. And he was a local Asian businessman. She went on to tell police that one day Rami had asked her to go and have sex with one of his friends. He said that she would be doing him a massive favour, so she did it. And he said that it wouldn't happen again, but it did, like, over and over and over again. She didn't realise till later that Rami was getting money for her doing that, so he was basically pimping her out.
Right, okay.
Then Rami started taking her to parties. There was 2 houses in Barrow that he would take her to. There was a couple in Rochdale and Oldham, and then more in like other places, and she would have sex with like several men. And I was like, he was getting the money for it.
Mm-hmm.
She said that Mo was the organiser and that she had met him when she was 12. So he had been grooming her since then and taking her to sex parties to make money.
Mm-hmm.
There would be other girls there and several men, most of them Asian, and there would be lots of alcohol and drugs. She said that whoever was willing to pay the most money was the man that she would be made to have sex with.
Mm-hmm.
And the men were told they could do whatever they wanted to the girls because they were white trash. Ellie said that if she did anything wrong, like if she wasn't wearing the right thing or she hadn't made them enough money, you know, one night, like she would be beaten and she would be threatened with death.
Mm-hmm.
She was petrified of what she said was going to happen to her if they found out that she was talking to the police.
Mm-hmm.
So the police were like, shit, like this is what happened in like Rochdale and Rotherham. So for anyone who doesn't know, in 2012 in Rochdale near Manchester, a child sex abuse ring involving underage teenage girls was uncovered. 9 men who were British Pakistanis were convicted of sex trafficking and other offences including rape. This resulted in the Greater Manchester Police launching Operation Doublet, I'm not quite sure what it's called, to investigate other claims of abuse. And as of January 2024, a total of 42 men have been convicted, resulting in jail sentences totaling 432 years, and 47 girls were identified as victims of child sexual exploitation. I think you actually watched, you're going to say you don't remember, aren't you? But I think you watched the drama about that, called 3 Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what that was.
Yeah.
There was a dramatisation.
Yes, I did watch that.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I thought you would have maybe recognised what I was talking about.
No.
But anyway, that's what happened in Rochdale. And then in Rotherham, that's in South Yorkshire, there was a thing called the Rotherham Child Sexual Exploitation Scandal, and that consists of the organised child sexual abuse that occurred between the late 1980s until 2013. One report estimated that 1,400 girls were abused by grooming gangs, and as far as I can tell, these gangs were British Pakistani men as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the police were like, oh my god, this is massive, you know, this is another, we're getting to another one, it just sounded exactly the same.
Yeah.
So they moved Ellie out of Barrow for her own safety. So she provided the police with a list of potentially 60 young girls who were being taken to these sex parties as well.
Right.
The police verified that most of the girls were Barrow residents, and Mo Rami was arrested and brought in for questioning. So Mo denied the accusations. He said that he didn't really know Ellie. He denied being in any of the places that she said he'd been. He denied everything, and after 36 hours, he was released on bail. The police set up a major investigations team, and at Ellie's latest interview, she said that she'd been trafficked to Blackpool. So that was the starting point for the investigation, because the more recent events would be fresher in her mind.
Yeah.
So she'd be able to provide more detail.
Mm-hmm.
So she gave them locations in Blackpool, like she would describe where she'd been taken, and she gave great detail, even down to the colour of walls in a hallway and like what kind of calendar was on the wall. She would draw pictures of these places, and it was obvious she'd been to these places, because she could describe them in so much detail.
Mm-hmm.
So one officer even drove her down to Blackpool, and she showed him and a female officer places that she'd like where she'd been. She showed them where she had like walked, like, oh, I was walking on this street here, and this is where a car picked me up. But she couldn't take them any addresses because she just couldn't remember like how they actually got to the places. Mm-hmm. So they just kind of ended up driving around aimlessly, hoping that something would look familiar to Ellie. Now, because she couldn't give them anything concrete, police were starting to have their suspicions about Ellie. And when she went missing again,
I've already got my suspicions about Ellie. I feel like I don't know if she's telling the whole truth here.
Sorry. So when she went missing again, because she was classed as a high-risk missing person, the police had authority to look into the movements of her mobile phone. So they found the mast that her phone was connecting to in Blackpool when she said she'd last been there, you know, when she'd been trafficked. Mm-hmm. So officers went to all the hotels and guest houses in that area, they visited like well over 50 venues, because we know how big Blackpool is, how many places there is in Blackpool. And they actually got to the very last one, the Savoy Hotel, and that was the one where they actually had some luck.
Right.
So they asked the receptionist if an Ellie Williams had checked in on the 30th of June, and she checked and said yes. She had made the booking 2 days before online, and when they checked the CCTV, they saw that Ellie had checked in at 8:20 that evening. She went straight to her room, then she left an hour later. She was seen on CCTV visiting 2 shops by herself, and she bought some milk and a pot noodle. She then went back to her hotel room, and her door wasn't open again for 24 hours.
Right.
So this is when she said that she was being trafficked. But according to her, she told the police that at this time she was being driven around various locations in Blackpool and being forced to have sex with different men. So Ellie now became a suspect, and police were gathering information about the girls that she named as being part of the Asian grooming gangs. They went door to door and they didn't find one single victim. Like these girls, I mean, she gave them names, and these were the girls that were answering the doors, but they were like, no. About, they had no clue what they were talking about. So the decision was made that Ellie was going to be arrested for perverting the course of justice, but before they could take any action, she went missing again. But they actually found her like 12 hours later at her flat, and she was in a right state. The officers had body cams, and she was very clearly like off her face. Her mouth was bleeding, her eye was like swollen shut, just a bit shut, and her shoulders were like sort of bruised as if she'd been like pushed down. She could barely walk, she could barely talk, so an ambulance took her to the hospital. In the hospital, she told staff that she'd been drinking, she'd smoked weed and spice. Later, she told officers that she'd been told to go to Preston. So she'd met a guy called Ollie there, and he took her through like to a back street to meet 2 Asian men, and they both paid this Ollie to have sex with her. Then she went back to Barrow. Someone called Salza picked her up in a car and took her home. He and another man went into her flat, and she had sex with both of them. One of them smacked her twice in the face, and then they left, and 10 minutes later was when the police turned up.
Right.
So every allegation that she made it was still obviously being investigated, because although it looked like she'd been making stuff up, they still had to do their job and, find out if there was any truth to it. Because imagine
if they didn't
do anything about it and she'd been telling the truth.
Exactly. Which is not saying very convincing.
So she put them in touch with the guy, Ollie. I don't know if that was his real name or if that's just what she was calling him, but he was gobsmacked when she was accusing him of rape, and he denied it. When he found out the magnitude of the case, and along with being accused of rape, he was being accused of being involved in some big like organised grooming gang. It was life-changing for him. It affected his mental health so much that he couldn't even go to work.
Wow.
Because imagine being accused of being bad enough being accused of rape, but being part of like this big organisation.
It was totally not true.
Yeah, so they found CCTV of Ellie in Preston. So she said, obviously, that she'd pre-arranged to meet this guy, Ollie. So they got her on the CCTV, like, coming out of the train station. She's walking along the street, and there's this guy in front of her, and he was, like, you could see that he was asking people for a light. And so Ellie sort of caught up with him, and she must have been like, oh, I've got a light.
Yeah.
So he stopped, and it was clearly like a chance encounter. There was nothing prearranged about it. Like this guy was asking for a light. She's like, yeah, I've got one. So they chatted while she was raking in her bag looking for her lighter. They chatted for a minute, and then she gave him a light, and he was just like, oh, cheers, and kind of started to walk off. But Ellie followed him, and she clearly wanted to continue the conversation. So police were like, well, this is actually her grooming him then. Is this her grooming him to form part of her story? So the CCTV shows them walking along happily along the street together, chatting, and then they go up a lane where they had consensual sex for literally a few minutes. Then they swapped phone numbers and they went their separate ways.
Okay.
So this is Ollie, the guy that she had arranged to meet up with, who got paid for her having sex with two men up an alley. No, she met him by chance, had sex with him, and then went home. So after they went their separate ways, she was then caught on CCTV going into the toilets at the train station, and she went up to the mirror, and you could sort of see her like sort of rubbing at her eyes. So I don't know, she was like maybe spreading makeup on it to make it look like it was a bit bruised or whatever.
Yeah.
She was then she was then caught on CCTV returning to Barrow. So remember, she'd said that she'd got off the train and she was met by this guy Salza and the other guy, and they'd taken her back to her flat and brutally raped her. But she was seen on CCTV walking home by herself from the train station. So her brother's girlfriend was actually driving past and saw her. So remember, at this point, she's actually missing. No, like she'd been reported missing at this point.
Okay, yeah.
So the brother's girlfriend was like, right, get in the car, I'll drive you home. So she picked her up, drove her home. She just dropped her off outside her flat, and then she's obviously went home or whatever. And her brother, Ellie's brothers, called the police to say, look, we found her, we've got her.
She's home.
She's home. So that's why the police turned up 10 minutes later.
Right, okay.
Or 10 minutes, well, it was actually 20 minutes later, but she said that the guys had left 10 minutes earlier, but it was actually 20 minutes later. That's why the police turned up at her door. Obviously, I'd be like, right, where are you going, what's been happening? So, and when she was dropped off, when the brother's girlfriend dropped her off, she had no injuries, but yet 20 minutes later, when the police turned up, her eye was swollen, her shoulders were bruised, her mouth was bleeding, she was off her face.
So did she do it to herself?
Well, the police were like, has she done this to herself? You know, like, there was only 20 minutes. Like, did she do it? So, to them it was like, well, that seems to be the only explanation. So she was arrested for perverting the course of justice, and she was interviewed. She was shown the CCTV from Blackpool and was asked how she could explain that. And she was like, oh, you know, I'm sorry for lying, but she hadn't felt safe enough. The gang knew that she had been talking to the police and that they had told her to tell the police certain things so that it would put the police off the scent off their scent, you know, of chasing them. So the police told her they were having a hard time believing her. And she said, she's like, right, okay, I understand that, but I didn't get these bruises for no reason. And of course, the police asked her how she got her bruises, and she said, well, you tell me. And the police officer went, self-inflicted. And she was like, and Ellie replied, are you having a laugh? Because she's like, why? How could I do that to myself? Like, I mean, if you saw, you can actually...
Can you see her injuries?
You'll see pictures online and stuff, yeah. And then, like, you do wonder how could somebody do that to themselves? So now that the police had reason to believe that she was lying, the courts agreed to release Jordan Trengrove from prison, because remember, this guy that she accused, he was still sitting in the sex offenders wing of the prison. He had been 73 days.
Wow.
73 days this guy sat on the sex offenders wing, sharing a cell with a paedophile who admitted that he was guilty. So this paedophile was definitely a paedophile, you know, it wasn't somebody saying, no, I didn't do it. So Jordan had asked to change cell, but they wouldn't let him. But I suppose he was going to be put in a cell with some sort of sex offender, unless they were innocent. But you know what I mean. So you can't expect to be getting changed cells and stuff, because to the prison, he's just the same. He's been accused. So although he was released, but you know, when somebody's accused of something like that, it never quite goes away. Like as they say, mud sticks. And he has to live with people still thinking that he's a sex offender, because, spoiler alert, he's not. He didn't. After Ellie's arrest, police found multiple phones that she had. Throughout all of her police interviews, her phone was forever pinging, and she would show the officers and say, look, I'm being trafficked. Look at these messages I'm getting. But the police said that it was actually, it was clear from the evidence on the phones that she was in fact grooming men herself.
Right.
So she would meet these men on adult websites, and then they'd swap numbers, or actually, as I kind of go on to say later, a lot of it was on Snapchat.
Right. Okay.
So they would keep in contact online, and over time, these messages would get like more explicit. So they'd obviously just start off like maybe a bit flirty or whatever, and then they'd get more explicit, and then she would change the names on her phone, like on their name to names of the people that she had accused of being in the grooming gang.
Right.
So, like, this random man that she would be having sexual chat with, she would change his name to, say, Jordan.
Yeah.
So it would look like messages. So she would be encouraging him to say things.
Those things, right, okay.
So, as I said, most of the messages were through Snapchat, and she even made up a fake account with the name J Trengy7, pretending that that was Jordan Trengrove.
Right.
And she sent messages to herself incriminating Jordan.
But the police not have checked out that was his real account at the time, though.
No.
Because you would think that would be, like, because if he's saying, no, I didn't do it, then sure you'd think that, I know obviously with Snapchat, like, these messages only last a little bit of time, but then you think that username and stuff, they would check, like, his username on Snapchat.
I don't think, what do you mean, like, as in not just say to him, like, actually properly investigate it?
Yeah.
Because Snapchat is an American company, and there's something to do with, like, they don't necessarily get involved with things like that, especially from Britain.
Even just something as simple as looking at Jordan's phone, because obviously if you go into your Snapchat on your phone, it's going to have your username on it, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you're, they could see that he could have just deleted that or something, and no, I've not got Snapchat. Look,
yeah. Or but he could be saying, "Oh no, I have got Snapchat, but that's my username's this," and you're telling me, you know, if this girl was obviously getting messages from a different.
But then there's you can have more than one account, couldn't you?
Well, I guess you can.
I guess some, like, I'm agreeing with you. Like, you know, maybe they have looked into it that way, but that's still not ruling him out completely.
No, I get that, yeah.
And I think they actually did manage to get Snapchat to help them out or something like that. So that's what she was doing. She was encouraging these men to start talking.
So Cameron didn't do it either then?
No. So, so she was getting messages from men saying, oh, like, I should rape you again and things like that. But that was maybe their kind of, like, fetish thing that they've been talking about.
Yeah.
And she's only screenshotted certain bits to make it look like that.
Right.
Or, with the Jordan situation, that was her that was sending those messages anyway from... So, yeah. So police found evidence showing that Ellie had lied about every allegation she had made, and she was charged with perverting the course of justice, and she was given bail conditions, including to live under a strict curfew. So she had to be in the house by 7 p.m. every night, which shouldn't have been hard considering it was now 2020 and we were in lockdown, so she shouldn't have been out anyway. So
no, true.
But on the 19th of May 2020, Ellie's mum phoned the police and told them that she hadn't made it home in time for her curfew, and she didn't know where she was. So police went out looking for her. Someone walking their dog soon notified the police that they had seen a woman in a field and she looked injured. So the police found Ellie walking through a field, and she kept looking behind her as if someone was following her. So the police officer got her in the van, and she had, like, a black eye. Her finger was bleeding. She had, like, a really bad cut on her finger. He asked her if she'd cut it, and she said she wasn't telling him anything. She just wanted to get home as her curfew was 7 p.m. and she was late. However, she did talk eventually, and she told him that she'd been picked up by a car and she'd been taken to a house in Barrow city centre. She said there were 10 Asian men in the house and she was brutally raped by them. Looking more closely at her injuries, it was noted that her right eye was completely swollen over, and a really nasty cut to her pinky finger, and her legs and her face were just, like, absolutely covered in bruises. So she was taken to hospital and kept in overnight. The police searched the field and they found a hammer covered in blood.
Right.
And it was examined for DNA, and there was only one piece of DNA on that hammer.
So she did it to herself?
Ellie's.
Why?
I don't know. A Home Office pathologist... Why is my voice so croaky?
I don't know.
A Home Office pathologist produced a report about Ellie's injuries, and it said the injuries identified to this young woman's body are consistent with this woman striking herself a multiplicity of times with a hammer to the head, the face, both legs, arms, and the front of the lower abdomen. So the police were actually concerned that she may end up, like, really hurting herself, like, you know, maybe even killing herself, you know, because it was this bad. So for her safety, they decided to arrest her for breaching her bail conditions.
Right.
So she was taken to Barrow police station, and in the time that the officers were assessing what to do with her, they were made aware that she'd put a post on Facebook.
Okay.
So on the 20th of May, just after 2 p.m, she had posted a Facebook status I haven't been able to find like the whole post because it was like apparently like a really long Facebook post.
Right.
But I'll sort of tell you bits that I read.
Uh-huh.
This is the hardest post I'm ever going to write. I didn't want to share this because I'm scared of the judgment that will come with it. It's why I keep quiet about what's happened to me, but people have asked me to tell my story. When people have asked why I have a black eye or bruises, I've made every excuse from falling over to banging it on a door. Yesterday, I was put in the back of a car, taken to an address to have sex with 3 Asian men. Afterwards, I was beaten because I was in debt to these men for not attending parties for over 7 weeks due to coronavirus. The organisers of the party decided to beat me to teach me a lesson. I used to believe these people loved me. I realise now that they used me for their own gain and profit. They've given me drugs to the point I was nearly addicted to heroin. They have stripped me naked, beaten me and dumped me in the middle of nowhere with nothing. I mean nothing. No money, phone, ID, clothes, shoes, nothing. They have broken my ribs, cut my throat, carved words into my body, stabbed me, burnt me and beat me black. They have put lit petrol rags and threatening letters through my letterbox. They have followed me home, tried to drown me, strangled me, and they have stalked me. They have had guns. They have waved around and held to my head. They've abused me in every way possible. I thought the only way I could escape this life was to marry one of them or get pregnant or kill myself. I didn't want to share this, but people need to know about this local and very real issue. People need to be looking out for young girls and protecting them. If me sharing my story helps raise awareness and helps just one person, then it'll make it worthwhile. So she said that she'd reported this to the police, but it just made things worse, and the traffickers had been even more violent to her.
Right.
She claimed that she wasn't the only girl to be trafficked in Barrow, and she hoped that they would come forward so that they could get the justice they deserved. She also added 20 photos to the post. These were our most recent horrific injuries that had been inflicted on her by this grooming gang. There were images of her with a black eye that was swollen, nearly shut, bruises all over her face, cuts and bruises to her arms, legs, fingers, feet and throat. Absolutely covered. And you can see these pictures online.
Right.
Within hours, her post had gone viral, and it gave others the courage to speak up about their own abuse. So many people commented their experiences so that she wouldn't feel alone.
Right.
Because they're like, look, you spoke out, you've given me the courage that you're not alone in this, And of course, so many other people just commented to show their support and to tell her how brave she was for speaking out. Someone set up a Facebook page called Justice for Ellie, and all over the UK, people were supporting her. They would have like posters in their windows saying Justice for Ellie and like bumper stickers on their cars. Like, it was everywhere. A local councillor set up a crowdfund page for a private prosecution against the grooming gang, and within days it was like over £22,000.
Wow.
And unfortunately, though, the whole of the Asian community was targeted. And someone mentioned a particular restaurant, and that was it. That's where the gang was centred. You know what rumours are like.
Yes.
And the owner was getting vile phone calls. Like, I'm sure you can imagine what kind of things were being said. People were spitting at the window, like going past, honking their car horns. People were throwing things, breaking the windows. One of the staff even left town because he was scared for his life.
Wow.
Over 150 crimes were reported to the police linked to Ellie's Facebook post, including 83 hate crimes, because people decided to target the whole of the Asian community, which is ridiculous. But it kind of reminds me of COVID, because people were blaming the Chinese.
Yeah.
Even Chinese people who live in our country, who were born and bred in our country, they're like, well, we're not going to go to their Chinese takeaway because they gave us COVID.
Exactly,
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Because, unfortunately, there may be somebody that's done something wrong, whether they be from an Asian community, from, white community, any other sort of one. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean, the whole... Everybody's...
That's ridiculous.
You can't tarnish everybody with the same brush.
No, but that's what they did. There were protests in the town centre. People were marching, shouting "Justice for Ellie Williams." Even though we were in lockdown, these people were ignoring the rules because they were so angry about what had happened to this 19-year-old girl. Because if you remember, when we were in lockdown, we were supposed to be in our houses. We weren't allowed to be in gatherings, but yet these people were doing marches and protests.
What the hell?
Of course, the police knew that she was lying, but they couldn't say anything because it would affect Ellie's upcoming trial.
Right, okay.
So they couldn't really...
keep quiet.
Yeah, they couldn't really do anything about it. So her trial was in October 2022, and she was found to have made up every single allegation that she had made.
Wow.
She hadn't been raped by anyone.
Mm-hmm.
She hadn't been sent messages by anyone. The girls that she had named, who she said they were victims as well, they were just girls from her school or people that she'd found online, like, you know, maybe friends of friends that she'd seen on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
All of her injuries had been inflicted on herself with a claw hammer. I mean, how you could do that to yourself?
Yeah, I know. How could you do that? Why would you do that?
Also, she lied about having a child. That she lied that she worked at Rami's restaurant, that she'd had a backstreet abortion, she was a heroin addict and she'd been in a coma. All of that was just all made up.
Right, okay.
So the trial went on for 3 months and it took the jury just a few hours to reach a unanimous decision. Guilty of all charges. So she was convicted of 9 counts of perverting the course of justice and she was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison.
Wow.
And that's where she should be because she is a dangerous woman.
Why though? Why? What was she hoping to achieve?
I don't know.
Do we not know?
No, that's it. That's the end of the case.
Well, that's annoying.
Like, I said, like, she seemed to have a normal childhood. Like,
did not assess her like psychologically.
yeah, she had mental health. You know, she had assessments, and she was found to be completely sane. She knew right from wrong.
Did she just want attention?
Must have been.
I mean, because why else would you go to the lengths of that as to ruin, obviously, innocent men's lives?
Well, yeah, I mean, these men, especially Rami, Mohammed, sorry, I can't remember his second name, but Rami, Jordan and Cameron, them especially.
And Ollie obviously was affected by it as well.
He was affected by it. Like, well, there was also, there was others as well, but...
Do you know what I mean? That's terrible, like, you know, poor guys, you know, because...
Mud sticks.
It does, and you know, obviously maybe mentally it's affected them as well, but like I just don't know what she was hoping to gain out of that then.
I have no idea, but can you imagine? I mean, Jordan's 73 days, he sat in a sex offender's wing. He hadn't done anything wrong, and he had to live for 73 days with those vile sex offenders, paedophiles, like, he must... You know, that would have to affect him.
But then the thing is,
so
it's
much.
a shame because like there will be like women and men genuinely out there that this has happened to, but they might not be confident enough to go and report these things because, well, they might not be believed.
And she had the cheek to say she didn't want to be that girl. She didn't want to be that girl that made up lies about being raped because, you know, and it does happen. I mean, I know somebody who has been assaulted. And one of the first things that they said was, what if they don't believe me?
Yeah.
You know, they're worried about not being believed, and it's because of people like this that they're not being believed, and it's ridiculous.
Because obviously it's, you know, serious allegations, and of course if it has happened, then 100% you need to report it and all the rest of it. But, you know, it makes it more difficult for people.
Definitely.
Because they just will worry that the police might not believe them because, like, you know, to give the police their side of it, I mean, they've probably had so many cases where people have, you know, cried the rape card and it's not happened. So, you know, they probably do come up against people that...
And it's such a hard thing to be able to prove as well.
Well, that's it.
But I reckon she's taken note, she's watched documentaries and whatever else about about grooming gangs for her to come up. Because as soon as I kind of started researching, I thought, oh, this sounds like that... the Rochdale grooming gang, that kind of sounds like that because that was Asian men, you know, young girls, you know. So I do wonder if that's where she's came up with the idea for it, but just why would you do that to innocent people?
I know, but why would you do that to herself? Like, I don't, like I say, she's beating herself up and hitting herself with a hammer.
You should see the photos.
I mean, that must, you know, I mean, obviously if the photos are horrific, then, you know, that's going to have hurt. So what would make you...
I have no idea. I don't get it.
I can't, like, I don't know about you, but, you know, when it comes to, like, things like that, I mean, I just couldn't imagine inflicting pain on myself because it hurts. Like, things hurt.
Exactly, you don't want to be hurt.
Exactly, so I don't know why you would actually do that to that extreme. And like I say, for what end? Like, what were you hoping to gain out of it?
Well, she got 8.5 years jail sentence out of it.
Well, that's what she
and she deserves it.
Well, 100% she deserves it.
Yeah.
It just seems pointless, like, why?
It was pointless. Totally pointless. There was no point in it whatsoever. And all that happened was that she got herself put in jail and innocent people got
to me, she must have
hurt in it.
Like, some mental health issues there, because I don't know how anybody sane would want to do that to themselves or anybody else.
Well, apparently she's completely sane.
Well, I don't know, but yeah, I think she deserves the prison time.
She does. So thank you to everybody for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.